Oh my God. Happy Thursday at Soccer We Trusters, because we have the most recent U.S. men's national team roster to talk about. Yeah, it's going to be awesome, this show, like it always is. So hit like and subscribe, and let's get after it.
Yes, what is up, everybody, and welcome to Lothar Oceaner's favorite podcast in Soccer We Trust.
I'm Jimmy Trashcan Cream Cheese Conrad, also known as Jim, alongside Hollywood Harry, also known as Heath Pearce. But unfortunately, we have no Charlie Chuckwagon Davies today. He's on Europa League duty for CBS Sports' new Golazo channel, which, if you haven't checked out yet, everybody, you should, because it's free. Find it on CBSSports.com, the CBS Sports app, Pluto TV, Paramount Plus. And we're just very proud of him and everybody else behind the scenes that's getting that channel off the ground. History making. It's awesome. It's very cool to have a 24/7 channel dedicated to the beautiful game. Anyway, let's talk some shop, Hollywood. We have a U.S. men's national team roster that's been announced for this upcoming friendly against Mexico. We have CONCACAF announcing the host cities for this summer's Gold Cup. We have weekend previews. Where do you want to start? It's got to be the roster, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I just teed you up. I love it. Super flat. I love that.
You're like, right? You're going to say that, right? You're going to say yes.
You're going to say that. That's where I want to start.
Well, I mean, this is Sergino Dest's national team, so but I look, I'll like to get into it. There's a lot of complaining about, like, well, one, I think people miss the context of, like, why is this an all MLS roster? And you're like, well, if I've got to explain that, then I've got to explain a lot, so I'm not going to get into that. But there are some names on there that I really like, that I want to have a look at, that are part of the future. Obviously, there's some recycled ones. Our pool is not that deep to just go, oh, we're going to go all MLS guys, but we're not going to include any of the ones who've been part of it. We're going to have only, like, we've got youth national teamers throughout that have other priorities, but I like this.
Okay. So let's give everybody some context. If you haven't seen the drop, 23 players got named. This is for the April 19th friendly against Mexico. The game falls outside of a designated FIFA window, so clubs are not obligated to release their players. But then I think for that reason, and I think they knew that always going into this, Heath, that it was going to be more domestic-based, MLS-based players that were going to be involved in this.
This is a multi-year All-State, like, sponsored thing, right? Like, I think it's a new series that I don't know if
it's called the Continental Clasico. Clasico.
Yeah.
And the game's going to be in Glendale, Arizona, which is where I scored my header against Mexico. So long may that continue. I'm looking at Walker Zimmerman or maybe Josh Winder getting a big header in this one to beat our biggest rivals. We got 10 players from this 23-man team that were on the World Cup squad. We got Sergino Dest, Sean Johnson, Aaron Long, Shaq Moore, DeAndre Yedlin, Walker Zimmerman, Kellen Acosta, Christian Roldan, Jesus Ferreira, and Jordan Morris. I think one of the big notable absences, maybe Club America's Alejandro Zendejas, because he could have been released. Mexico's roster has 22 players that are playing in Mexico, so that was an interesting one. Only 2 players are outside of MLS that got released for this: Sergino Dest, who I just mentioned, who hasn't played for AC Milan since January 24th, and Alan Senora, who plays for FC Juarez in Mexico. So interesting things. Now, before we get into kind of the roster overall, I do want to key on what you had said before, Heath, because I think this is really important for people to know, because I feel like, oh, this game's worthless. It's about making money and not anything else. And I think people are looking at it wrong. Yeah. This is an opportunity very similar to the January camp where we can look at our player pool in a way that we wouldn't be able to look at it otherwise. Players are getting opportunities to get brought in front of the coaching staff, to be playing under high pressure situations, or let's look at Aiden Morris, right? I know you're high on Aiden Morris. I think he's a very good player. He's in camp with Kellen Acosta. Kellen Acosta's got close to 60 caps for the U.S. He's captained our team. When Aiden Morris goes into camp, he can see what the little things that Kellen Acosta is doing to allow him to be that good and that consistent to get close to 60 caps for the national team, right? They can take notes. Our younger players can take notes. Josh Winder can come in and be like, what is Walker Zimmerman doing so well that gets him here? How did he play in a World Cup and play in every single game? These are little questions that you wouldn't maybe be able to answer if you didn't have these types of friendlies. So yes, I understand. And I think it's fair to have, oh, well, this is about making money and blah, blah, blah. I get all that. But Mexico also gets a chance to look at their player pool and give some opportunities to players that they normally wouldn't see. Now, I know the counter to that is we already know what Jesus Ferreira and Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan can bring to the table. I get that too. I think in this instance, maybe you play a couple of them, but I think you sprinkle in a few of the younger players, because ultimately those are ones that are probably going to be leading us to greener pastures in the future. But I just want people to see this as an unbelievable opportunity to deepen our player pool, to get a better evaluation on these particular players. Yeah, you see them play for the respective clubs. Yeah, okay, cool. Aiden Morris is doing great for the Columbus Crew. And I know we saw him in the January camp, but let's bring him in again and see how he's continuing to evolve. And obviously he's been playing very well for the Crew this season. That's just one example, but I think this is a huge positive. And when people shit on it, it just bums me out, because not a lot of other countries around the world have this type of luxury.
Yeah, I think you're right in the way that it needs to be positioned. When I think about these players coming in, there's not one of these players that was like, oh yeah, but it's not like a real camp, you know? It's not like the big. They're like, no, this is the national team. I'm playing against Mexico, one of the biggest rivalries in the world between two countries in terms of the magnitude of it, and it's an opportunity to prove yourself. And when I think about that, I think about it through the lens of actually the comments that Matt Miazga was making, that he was screwed in the past, right? I don't know if you've read some of those comments.
I did
about him being called in, but when he talked about it, he was like, yeah, guys got called into January camps and then they become mainstays. And I'm like, exactly. That is the whole point, is that you now have another opportunity to prove yourself. Now you can talk about nepotism and you can talk about preferential treatments and favorites and all those things. And by and large, maybe one or two of those players exist on every team around the world, right? But for the most part, you got to come in and you got to prove yourself. So it's a chance for these young guys to get minutes, or get time in an intense environment. Because I promise you, no matter how good any of these young guys are, when you get into that first training with the national team, and you look at the speed of play, the time that you have to get the ball off your foot, the time that you have to make decisions, it is faster than anything you've ever experienced in your entire life. I don't care what club you play at, the national team and the international game, just because there is that willingness to prove themselves. It's a limited amount of time. It's a window of time that you're going to give everything. People go full in, right? And you learn quickly that jump, that gap. And we saw Aiden Morris, I don't think was great in his first cap with the national team, but he's been good with the club team. You got to keep rewarding good performances and see if they settle in. You and I both know we were never the best 100% of our games with the national team, but you try to keep yourself in the mix. You wait for your window, and then you know, if you get that chance, you keep trying to take it. So I do think it's the wrong perspective. You can look at it through the business lens. Yeah, it is a sponsored event or whatever, but it's important for us to look at it also through this opportunity to see these players, to get another look at these players, to test them. My question to you, Jimmy, is do you think that there's a conversation happening between the U.S. and Mexico in terms of like, who are we rolling out, right? We obviously want to entertain. We want to sell tickets. We want to make this continue to make this a strong rivalry.
Yeah, it's a good
question. Are we going younger players? Because you know, it might sound crazy to have that conversation, but sometimes those conversations do happen in friendlies where it's like, how do we go level for level? Are we focusing on the next generation of players who haven't been capped much and trying that? Because what you don't want to do is just create this one lopsided, because for US and Mexico, it can get ugly quick in terms of like one of these teams can run away from the other if not to say you would ever do that between them because they are rivals, but just thinking through that. Like you said, do you play some of the young guys, or are you going out to beat Mexico in a
Come on, you're definitely going out to beat Mexico, and they're doing it to go out there to beat us, of course. But that's a great question, and I wonder if those conversations are even happening. When I look at Mexico's roster, they have 9 players on this particular roster that played on their World Cup team. And so they're bringing some experience as well. We have 10 World Cup players. They have 9. I think Julian Araujo, who left the Galaxy to go to Barcelona, is the one lone player coming from overseas to be a part of this camp. So I assume we're going to see him. That's a pretty big ask to not play him if he's not going to see it. Chicharito apparently had a conversation with Diego Coca, not healthy enough to maybe be included in this one. Alexis Vega that comes back into the team. Very curious to see how he is going to play. I think they can still roll out a pretty good team. But to your point, when I think about the U.S., I think you have to have some experience in the spine of your team. And you know that Sergino Dest is another one. You're not going to have him fly all the way over and not play him. So he's probably going to start, which bums me out a bit. I wanted to see Caleb Wiley potentially at the right back position. You can maybe play him out wide left. I mean, I know that he's very capable in different positions. So it's going to be interesting to see. And you bring in DeAndre Yedlin as well. Ton of experience.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also, Jimmy, again, just to repeat the point for anybody who's just now tuning in or watching this live and wasn't here from the start, clubs don't have to release these players. So when you're asking for why not this person, why not that person, It could be because they didn't get called in, but it can very well be because they put out an outreach to all these clubs, and clubs are like, no, I would rather keep him in this environment. Like, are you going to play him? Oh, we can't promise we're going to play him. Okay, then I'd rather keep. Like, there is those conversations.
Right.
We talk about Brian McBride and the role he had as the general manager. That would have been the conversations he would have been having with Greg Berhalter to clubs, or in this case, Anthony Hudson, to have these conversations to say, like, how can we field the best well-rounded squad of players that will benefit from being in camp, whether they play or not, and then also, players that I need to contribute to try to be competitive against Mexico. So it's not as easy as being like, oh yeah, they got screwed, or maybe the players feel like they got screwed if they didn't get released. But there's a number of factors when they fall outside of the transfer, the international window, that could play a factor in or play a part in why a player might not be called in.
Well, Miles Robinson's a great example, right? He plays domestically in MLS. He got called into the Nations League stuff. He's not in this roster. And I think that's Anthony Hudson probably saying, I've seen you and where you're at. I don't know if we need to add more games to your heap as you continue to get back to 100% from your Achilles injury. And Atlanta may be going, we're not interested in releasing him. We'll let you go with Caleb Wiley. He's one of the 3 U20 players, on this, along with Cade Cowell and Josh Winder. Let's just kind of whip through the roster for everybody that hasn't seen it yet.
Well, they could also, Jimmy, real quick, they could have said for them, you can get him for one or the other, right? And they choose one. They used him because it was the most, and you build those. It's an ongoing relationship with these clubs. But yeah, anyways, let's go through this roster.
All right, goalkeepers. Drake Callender from Inter Miami, 25-year-old. He found out from the Inter Miami Youth Academy that he got called in. That was a pretty cool video. I highly encourage you to go check it out. Very heartwarming. Obviously, no caps for the national team. Roman Celentano from FC Cincinnati still doesn't have any caps either. Sean Johnson from Toronto FC, formerly of NYCFC, has 11 caps. I expect him to start. Do you agree with me there?
Yeah, and it's just so funny to me just because Sean Johnson has been in the national team pool since like nearly when I started in the national team, right? But it just goes to show you how screwed goalkeepers get, that he's been in this pool for literally over a decade, and he's got 11 caps because there's just not a lot of like room if you're the 3.
He's the Nick
Raimondo.
He was the 3,
and he was the
Marcus
the thing is like. And like it's amazing what he's done, right? To be able to stay continuing to kind of linger on, because if you look, there was like Bill Hamid throughout the years, Brad Gazan, there was all these people, and he continued to sort of knock on that door. But yeah, he should get the start in this one for sure. But really cool for guys to get their first call ups. That could be really transformative for confidence, and hopefully, whether they play or not, a few of them you'll see go like from like, oh yeah, I've got my first call up, to being like, oh yeah, I believe in myself on a whole nother level, because it is a game of margins in terms of confidence that can make all the difference.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think we've shared stories before about that first call up, and whether you play or not, when you walk back into your club team, you're walking different. Your chest is out, your shoulders are back, and in some ways you get validated for all the hard work and sacrifice that they notice that you're good enough to be a part of that pool. And it does change you, and it hopefully in a positive way, not for everybody. But I remember, and I'll share a quick story about this. I wasn't in the national team pool for a very long time. We can go into my late bloomer stuff later, but I remember being on San Jose. This is 2001. So right before, Jeff Agus is on our team.
Yep.
And when he would come back from camp, even though he had already had plenty of experience, you could just see him walk back into the fold, walk back into the group with just a little, it's not arrogance. It's just this confidence that you can't replicate any other way. So I remember I used to warm up with Wade Barrett. Okay. And I'm like, Wade, I wonder what that's like. Conversation, wonder what that's like. So I just said, I'm going to pretend that I played for the national team this week and see how I play. And it worked. Like for 2 days, I was like doing cheeky back heels and possession and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And having fun, right? Because I knew, hey, I was good enough to be out here. I'm good enough to be a good player. And then, of course, I made a mistake or two, and then my head went down. Then my head went down a little bit further, and then you realize I'm not good enough for the national team right now. But that psychology of that is really important. So to your point, I just think there is something to that little boost that you get for even if you get called up, that does make a difference. All right, let's get into defenders. We got Sergino Dest, who we mentioned, Aaron Long back in, Julian Gressel, Matt Miazga, who's had a long stay away from the team, Shaq Moore, Caleb Wiley, Josh Winder, the 17-year-old who'll be making his move to Benfica here pretty soon, DeAndre Yedlin, and Walker Zimmerman. I want to see Josh Winder play. I want to see him. I want to see him play for the red, white, and blue. I know he'll probably play for our U20s in the World Cup, U20 World Cup. But I think it's going to be Dest. My guess here, Heath, and I'll go first. Dest, Zimmerman, Winder, And I don't know who we have as left back. I guess Shaq Moore could play there. We could put Caleb Wiley out there. Maybe that's too much youth on the back line, but I don't care at this point. Play the goddamn kids, especially in the back line. Let's just see what they got. Let's just see. We did it with Jalen Neal in the January camp. He held his own. Why not against a pretty good Mexico team that's going to test us a little bit?
We do love right backs. I got to say that this national team, we've got a thing for depth at right back.
Remember when it was just only
on the left.
Only Steve Cherundolo was like our only right back for like 8 years.
Yeah,
and Frankie Haydick and Steve Cherundolo own the right back position for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
It's crazy, and now we've got like 7 of them that get called into every camp, and there's only one position for them. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say maybe just thinking like practically about this. Maybe you actually go with Sergino Dest on the left, and you have the opportunity at that point to go with oh man, I want to get Caleb Wiley on the field though.
I do too.
Caleb Wiley. Yeah.
Let's play him.
Yeah.
Why not? All right, let's move into midfielders. We have Kellen Acosta, Aiden Morris, Christian Roldan, James Sands. Welcome back, James Sands, Alan Senora, and Jackson Ewell, who's actually got 16 caps. He's catching us. Heath, I don't know if I want Jackson Ewell. We got all these guys that are getting close to the numbers that we had in terms of caps. But
Jimmy, be honest. When you look at these rollouts and they put the caps next to it, you compare your caps every single time,
always,
right?
always. But I have a goal, and a lot of these players don't have a goal, so I'll take it.
It's always there's levels, dude. There's levels.
There's levels.
Yeah.
Plus, I got a World Cup to my name. I'll take that. Yeah. So this is interesting because you could play a double pivot and have Acosta and Aiden Morris if we go with the 4-3-3, which I assume we will. Mm-hmm. We kind of got a lot of holding midfielders. I know Senora could be our 10, so maybe that's why you brought him in and talked him into coming. Not that I don't think it would have been hard to bring him in, but maybe Acosta, Aiden Morris, and Senora. I don't know. Or you could have Roldan play a little bit higher. I don't know. That's a tricky one in midfield because it feels like we got a lot of similar players there. What are you thinking?
It's a good question. By the way, I'm locking in on Caleb Wiley's been fantastic this year as a left back, so I'm saying play him as a starter. It's a big jump.
Thank you for waiting 5 minutes to finally agree with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a big jump, but like he's been and on the ball he's nice.
Sink or swim, dude. Sink or swim.
Yeah, I like it. And there's always time in the future to prove yourself again if you don't this time if you're playing that well at the club level and you're that young. Man, honestly.
You could drop Jesus Ferreira, though. You could, once we look at the forwards, you could drop Ferreira in the 10 spot. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. I don't see us like rolling out a different style of play for this one. I mean, when you look at it, there could be an argument to play with a back 3, but I just don't see how that makes sense, given the context that these players have not spent a lot of time together. But I would say I like Aiden Morris at the 6. Kellen Acosta, I think, is a good two-way player around him. And then you're really talking about maybe you go with James Sands James Sands has been really good at just blocking passing lanes all year. Like NYC AFC had some crazy stats about penetrating passes. We're at the lowest when he's on the field and in the midfield, not playing as a center back in a bind. But I really want to reward Aiden Morris for like his numbers outrageous. And so I'd say him next to Kellen Acosta, just so you have some consistency there and some experience. And then
now that I look at the forwards, and we got I'll just name them so you have those as options, Heath. We got Paul Arriola, Cade Cal, Jesus Ferreira, Jordan Morris, Brandon Vasquez.
Yeah.
So I would honestly at this point drop Ferreira into the 10 spot and then put Vasquez up high. Vasquez up high, and then
Jordan Morris on one side.
JMO on one side and
JMO on the left, and then Cade Cowell. I mean, Cade Cowell's the next JMO, so I don't think you'd play both of them at the moment. But Cade Cowell's he's exactly at that age and development where you could get him 30. Ariola's on the right hand side. But I don't see a world. Look, Jordan Morris obviously has been best as a striker recently.
He's on fire too.
But generally speaking, he can play on the left. So maybe you go with him at the 9 and Brandon Vasquez after. But I think. Like using Jordan Morris in that context isn't something that we need to see for the future, right? Because there's just there's too many people there. It doesn't make any sense to say let's use crucial minutes. So I say Brandon Vasquez there.
Yeah, his best way forward is the 9, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But on the left hand side, you just got to choose Jordan Morris or Cade Cowell, and then on the right, you're kind of really only left with Arriola, and that's it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I do want to see Kate Cal get some meaningful minutes, though, and I think
Christian Roldan. Christian Roldan's playing on the right hand side too.
There.
Like
That's
he can play there. A little more advanced. So
all right. So that was our initial kind of breakdown of the roster. Pretty excited to see some of these names. I want to see some of these kids play and partner with some of our older players and see how they fit in. I think that'll be very exciting. But we'll have a proper preview ahead of this game as it gets closer. We're 6 days away from kickoff. Again, that'll be on April 19th in Glendale, Arizona, where I scored the roll the clip goal. My header against Mexico didn't even need to jump. Anyway, we're going to take our first break of In Soccer We Trust. We're going to come back and talk about MLS's handling of racism due to some recent going-ons between the New York Red Bulls and San Jose Earthquakes. And that should be an interesting conversation for Heath and I and everybody listening and watching. And then we'll get into our weekend previews and CONCACAF Gold Cup venues, so do not go anywhere.
Europe's most exciting title race continues with world-class clubs, legendary rivals, and unbelievable goals.
Brilliant! What a goal!
The Serie A lives here on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
All right, if you're a U.S.-based fan of the beautiful game, Paramount Plus is an absolute must-have subscription, from the NWSL to the Champions League to Serie A and so much more in between. And honestly, if you're not sure if it's for you, then we're going to make sure that you try. So give it a try. 1 month for free by using the code NWSL2023. And of course, we want to give a shout out to everybody that's been supporting us throughout this last year and a half, Heath. I think that's how long we've been going here on In Soccer We Trust. We just got nominated for the Best Soccer Podcast, and we got seconds. We got second. This some guy named James Richardson, who I know who he is, actually. That's a really good show, and I enjoy what he's done for so many years in the game. But we ended up getting second. Second in our first year, though, and we were
Good.
one above Sky Sports. So I think we're trending in the right direction, Hollywood.
Yeah, I like it. And it's also just a testament to the community and their willingness to participate, one, in listening, watching the show, being part of this, engaging with us on social media, but also voting. And so, yeah, super grateful to everyone. And obviously, this is a national team focused podcast, or it's actually a soccer podcast through the lens of the national team. But as we head towards 2026, it's only going to get bigger and better. And appreciate everybody who's been around for the ride so far. Second place, I love it. I love it. I love the start. Yeah.
It's a great start. We didn't put a trophy in our cabinet just yet, but we're working towards making that happen. So to echo the sentiments from our very own Hollywood Harry, Heath Pearce, we appreciate
auto promotion though, Jimmy. Auto promotion. We're in the first division now. We've gone up to the top league.
That's true. We got on it. Yeah, we're automatically promoted. We don't have to play in the playoff to get into that. You love that. Rafa says Best Soccer Pod with or without that award. We bow down to you and your greatness, Rafa. Thank you so much. And for everybody else that's putting those kind words into the comments. So make sure you hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications and podcast platform of choice. You guys know the deal. Like, follow, leave us reviews, good ones especially. All right, Heath, let's get into something heavy. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about this recent incident between New York Red Bulls forward Dante Vanzeir, their new, I think he's a DP signing from Belgium. He, in the run of play against the San Jose Earthquakes, there was a foul between him, I think, and Hudson from the Quakes. And while Judson was getting tended to, or because he was rolling, I think he got kneed in the back. He's on the ground. Vanzeir said something, and Jeremy Audacy immediately reacted to what he said, as did a few of his teammates. And the game got delayed for 20 plus minutes. Now, the coach for the New York Red Bulls, Gerhard Strubert, elected not to take him out of the game. And there's since been an apology, public statements from Dante Vanzeir and from Strubert and from the New York Red Bulls condemning this. And you have the player, Vanzeir, saying, acknowledging that he said something. Audacy's come out, or at least had a quote after the game saying that the reason why he didn't walk off the field is because the player said he just said it in general. And and it's a racial slur. And it was said more, it wasn't directed at anybody. Now, obviously, there's a lot more behind it. MLS is having their own investigation right now. I don't know where you want to start with this. I just think that there's a zero tolerance policy that MLS has had in place for quite some time. And I think it's incredibly important that they follow through on that zero tolerance. You can't, whether you're coaching, whether you're a parent, wherever it is, if there's cracks in the rules that you set, and it just, you're going to lose the respect of the people that you're trying to lead. And there are a lot of people that they're leading here. And it's not just the players on either team that were involved in this incident. It's also the fans that pay their hard-earned money to come to this, right? They're looking to these organizations to lead in a proper way. And this has no place in our game. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think this guy's got to get out of the league. Timo Weah came out and said the same thing. Get him out of the league. Simple.
Yeah.
There's like, how else are you going to change? And how else are you going to change behavior? Unless there's some type of consequence, like zero tolerance, where you're like, you're out. Or guess what? Manager Gerhard Strubert, like your team loses 3 points as well. Like that game's a 3-0 loss. It's a forfeit for you if anytime a player or anybody conducts themselves in this way. I think you'll start to see the change that they want to see, right? And that the change that there should be happening at this time. It's insane, man. It's insane. And go ahead.
No, I think yeah, there should be the zero tolerance policy should be acted upon. I think the process is first the investigation. I think globally soccer is not the most progressive sport, but domestically I believe it is. And it has the opportunity to be the first mover of enacting or creating or seeing the change that we want to see globally, that we want to see domestically. And as the stewards of this sport, there has to be extreme consequences for these types of things. Because if you don't, like you said, you are misleading the people that you are meant to be leading. And it allows there to be a hearsay and circumstance and like nuance. And there is no nuance to certain words that exist. There is no nuance to or more context needed to certain things, that if you go to the point of saying something that you shouldn't say, you should be reprimanded in the most extreme way. And so a lot of people are calling for expulsion. And as the investigation rolls out, if indeed it all is what it is, then yeah, whatever the max parameters that they set for repercussions or consequences, they should follow, because it's just like you said, it's a zero tolerance. It isn't like yeah, but like, have you heard the other side type of thing when it comes to these kinds of things. It just needs to be cut out fully.
What's interesting is in his statement apology, this is the player Dante Vanzeir.
Uber like should have like we've been through this enough times over the last couple of years.
There's precedent, right? There's precedent.
That
like he should know what to do here in these situations.
At a bare minimum, like you should at least be able to be like, you're out, and I as the leader of this club, of this team, of this group of players, will take responsibility for whatever happens or doesn't happen. But I need to take responsibility for this moment, regardless of knowing the full picture of what you told me. So
yeah, he had to take him out. And the fact that he didn't, and he had the goalkeeper, his very own goalkeeper, I think pleading with him to take him out, really demonstrates the actions and the thoughts of Gerhard Struber in that particular moment when he had a choice, and he elected to go for 3 points and keep one of his best players in instead of actually doing the right thing. And that's really unfortunate. Now, Dante Vanzeir's part of his statement apology said, "I accept full responsibility for my actions." And this is where the guy loses me a little bit. "While I did not intend to cause any harm or offense with my language, I know that I did, and for that I'm deeply sorry." Dude, if you say something like of that nature, you have to know that you're intending to harm somebody, to trigger somebody in a negative way. There's just no, like, you don't use that language to do anything but that. So for him to say I didn't intend, that's such, listen, the more I like read his thing and then reread it, the more I'm like, F this guy, and let's get him out of the league and let's just move on and get through this as quickly as possible.
Intent, intent, it has, again, it is very, it's binary. It's black or white, right? Intent means nothing in the context of certain language that exists in our society. It doesn't, like, and so, especially when you're talking about on the field of play with people around being said in that, like, that's the context, we're not talking about other circumstances where that could come out in the form of like music, art, culture, these types of things. We're talking about on the field, in a game of play, in competition, using language that has no place in society, period.
Okay, so New York Red Bull manager Gerhard Struber. This is from Felipe Cardenas. What's up, old friend of the show? He said, Gerhard Struber said, Dante Vanzeir's racial slur, he called it a tough moment for him in the club. Felipe asked Struber why it's taken this long to hear from him publicly. And Red Bull's official answered that MLS is still investigating the incident. We cannot comment. Struber said that he had a very good exchange with San Jose forward Jeremy Audacy. It was a decision to remove Vanzeir from team activities. And that was made between Struber, Vanzeir, and club management. So right now, Vanzeir has stepped away from the club. Now, I think this is important, Heath, for everybody to know. This happens. There was an incident last season between DC United's Taxi Fontas and a defender from Inter Miami, Amy Mabika. And MLS found in their investigation that the allegation made by Mabika was credible. While the league investigation could not independently verify the allegation, MLS did not find credible Fontas's claim, which he said that he didn't say anything in that moment, discriminatory or otherwise. Now, video of that incident clearly shows Mabika suddenly reacting to something he believed he heard from Fontas. MLS was unable to confirm it independently, though additional eyewitness accounts, video footage, or audio recordings, what Fontas said in that moment, has been the league's long-standing practice in determining player discipline for these types of allegations. Anyway, so I'm just bringing that up because there was an incident that happened last year. Fontas voluntarily remained separated from DC United during this investigation. We're seeing very similar action here. He did not participate in the next 2 MLS matches after that, but he is, and that believe, I think, came to the end of the season. And now Taxi Fontas is playing again for DC United. And it just feels like everybody just forgot about it or moved on. I feel like there's a standard protocol that's happening here. And this one, I don't know if that one it just feels like we're not listening to the people that are being victimized in this particular instance. They're like, oh, well, did he really say it? Did he mean it like that? You know, I mean, what? I don't know, dude.
It's like you said, if you said there's very few ways that you can punish somebody with context of this without expelling them, right? You can hit their wallet. Maybe that, depending on who they are,
points.
maybe that
knock the team points, and you get that player at least heavily suspended or out of the league.
Yeah, you have to take those extreme measures that have, really dire consequences, right? So that the player, the club, the fan base, the league, there is a precedent that's set moving forward that starts to eradicate that from the game, because there's just I can't imagine a scenario where any player, for any reason, would ever need to say things that have been said, and clearly punishments aren't harsh enough because it's happened again, right? Like you said.
Right.
And so it now needs to go a step further. You make a first example, clearly it's not good enough, right? Now you need to make another example and go a step further. And you go and you go and you go. Or you go to the farthest extent and then and make an example that way.
Man, there's a lot to unpack here, of course. And as more news comes out about this particular story, we'll be sharing it with you guys in each show. And there is one instance, though. You remember Alexander Katai, who played for the LA Galaxy, and then his wife put something on her Instagram story about a racist remark on her Instagram story. And 3 days later, Alexander Katai was off the LA Galaxy. Now, the LA Galaxy isn't doing a lot of things right these days, but I absolutely love that. Like, we don't have time for people like this. And even though it wasn't the player himself, it was his wife. And maybe there was some other evidence that we don't know about of Katai doing something or having a history in this type of behavior. They got him out of there 3 days later. So I like that. That sounds great, right? Katai's out. He can go be an asshole somewhere else, but not in this league where they're representing a lot of great people that are doing a lot of great things and trying to build something special and positive here. We don't have time for these jerks. So I thought that one was handled appropriately. So it'll be interesting to see how this one's handled, especially with the Taxi Fontas example from last year not really being brought up again. But I thought it was worth connecting these dots a little bit. I would love to see the Red Bull fans protest until
change happens. I would love to see the league. I would love to see the teams. I'd love to see that type of. And by the way, I'm putting it on all these other people to make a statement and a stand, and it's not their job to do so. It's the league's job to do so. It's the team's job to do so. And even as I say that out loud, I'm like, oh, now I'm asking the fans to have to make a stance on something that shouldn't be part of the game as it is. I'm asking, I'm asking all these factors to help push it. And maybe that is what we continue to need in our society. But yeah, ultimately it should come down with the most extreme of consequences, because it's just unacceptable. Period.
It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable and has no place in the game whatsoever. All right, we're going to take our second and last break of In Soccer We Trust. When we come back, we'll talk about these CONCACAF Gold Cup venues. We'll do some weekend previewing, including El Tráfico between the Red Hot LAFC, the reigning champs, taking on the LA Galaxy, who are the opposite of Red Hot, and maybe some other stuff we can get into, so don't go anywhere.
Phenomenal! Absolutely magisterial here! Artilharia do Campeonato Brasileiro! Colpisce ancora! Golazo!
Welcome back, everyone, to In Soccer We Trust, the CBS Sports Golazo Network, the first of its kind, free 24/7 channel dedicated exclusively to global soccer coverage, is now streaming on the CBS Sports app, Pluto TV, and Paramount Plus. You can get your morning started off on the right foot at 7 a.m. Eastern time, that is, or I think Pacific too. They replay it with Morning Footy, our weekday soccer culture-driven morning show that has our very own Charlie Davies on it. Plus, don't miss the rest of our comprehensive programming lineup, including matches and re-airs, original studio shows, highlights, documentaries, and much more. The CBS Sports Golazo Network is the ultimate year-round streaming destination for fans of the beautiful game. And I had a chance to be on the show a couple times this week. I'm excited about it. They have another show called Box to Box with Poppy Miller and Ian Paul Joy and Aaron West, which is very good and fun as well. It's kind of a headline show and has great vibes. So I love being a part of anything that they got cooking over there, the Golazo channel. We highly encourage you to get on it. Actually, producer Alex is going to roll this clip for us. We had Charlie, our very own Chuck Wagon, doing his thing. And anytime you see him, you got to comment on his leather jacket. But he had a chance to talk to U.S. men's national team's #1 goalkeeper, Matt Turner. So let's take a look at Charlie's interviewing skills. Check this out.
Are on point, because I used to look at them things and it looked like you had skis on.
Chuck.
Now it
Why
looks
you
like,
gotta do them like
hey,
that?
now you got it on point.
No, I still listen. They still look like skis. They still look big, but at least they're a little bit more effective now. No, I've gotten a lot better at that, identifying things in the game where I can hurt the other team rather than just sort of making a pass to make a pass.
Do you remember when this is going to date me, but there was a show called Knight Rider back in the day, and David Hasselhoff was the main character, Michael Knight, and he always wore a leather jacket just like Chuck. So I don't know if he's inspired by Knight Rider. Shout out to everybody who knows what the hell I'm talking about. Also, that wasn't it. So Chuck's coming in and making fun of Matt Turner's feet. Matt Turner definitely played out of that, but that wasn't the only question he asked Matt. We got another one for you. Check this out.
So open and candid and willing to act, doing elf scenes with the Revolution, which I think I give you a B+ for that. How much longer till you hang up the boots and you take one of our jobs?
Listen, I don't want to say that's definitely something on my radar. I'd love to be on TV. I'd love to do that kind of stuff afterwards. But my full focus right now is on playing at the highest level that I possibly can, and continuing to play for the national team and play well. But I definitely feel like I have a future on the television.
That's what I thought.
Okay, so Heath, I'm looking at Matt Turner. I'm looking at you. Back to Matt. Back to you. Back to Matt. Back to you. You guys kind of have the same look. I'm going to be honest. A little
don't come up in here. Don't come up in here. Hey, don't come up in here looking for some airtime. You know what I mean? Jimmy, you and I, we started from scratch. I remember the first time that I remember both of us kick TV. I was told I was going to have like 6 weeks to get like adjusted into doing media and daily content and stuff. And then all of a sudden we were given the thing of, Jimmy, your new show starts in 2 weeks. Heath, you're going solo on the show in 2 weeks. And I remember just rep after rep where like working off of a teleprompter or whatever, where I didn't blink for like hours, just staring, trying to read and like robotic and all these things.
Flop
like,
sweating?
listen, yeah, man. Oh, the amount of the shirts I used to sweat through was wild. So listen, Matt Turner, you can have this job, but you better get some reps in. You know what I mean? Because if not, we'll have you on here as a guest one day, and I'll just start throwing some curveballs at you. You know what I mean? And then I'll clip it and I'll put it on the internet. You know?
Okay. Okay. Then how are we? Yeah, exactly right. How are we rating Chuck? Everybody listening, hit us up on ISWT Pod and rate Chuck's interviewing skills. If you're watching on the YouTubes, after you hit like and subscribe, let us know how Chuck is doing on Morning Footy and as an interviewer. I thought he did okay. He's trying to get in there, trying to get that the entertaining side of the interview down. Way to go, Chuck. I'm pretty pleased with his questions.
I like that. I like that. He's got to stop messing with the pen, though. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, too
much pen work right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I get it. It's a good brand play, but too much pen work. You know what I mean? No, I love the show. I love the people on the show. It's awesome to see, and you know, Chuck, he's gonna be hosting 60 Minutes someday if he keeps that.
We miss you, Chuck. We miss you, Chuck. And give me on 60 Minutes. That would be unbelievable. What a career arc that would be. All right, let's talk about the Gold Cup, I should say, because CONCACAF announced that there's 15 cities doing 14 games, and that is, or 15 stadiums, I should say, doing 14 games. Apparently, there's going to be 2 different stadiums being used in Houston, Texas. But so
Jimmy, hold on. There's a comment real quick that we'll talk about this, but there's the comment of Jav that says it's a dog fight out there, my dog. Do you remember that comment? The funniest
That's
person on Arsenal? He's like, he's like Matt Turner accidentally. He's like telling Kevin De Bruyne, "Relax, dog. It's a dog fight out there." If he's gonna say that on every episode, he can have my job.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
the
that's
unintentional
great.
humor is the way to go.
Yeah.
All right. So
Anyways.
the big news for me is that SoFi Stadium's getting the Gold Cup final, when I believe it was reported by FIFA that stadium wasn't big enough to host a World Cup game. So that's an interesting twist, as it were. Snapdragon Stadium, where San Diego Loyal play, they are hosting one. That'll be interesting. We got Las Vegas getting Glendale, Arizona, where this US-Mexico game's going to be played.
It's weird, Jimmy. It's almost like San Diego's trying to get an MLS team.
That's really weird.
Now all of a sudden they're just got some games on the map. It's a bizarre.
Funny how that works.
No Northwest. Kind of shocking.
It is. Yeah. No Pacific Northwest up there. You can see kind of empty in that part of the country. I thought it was a bit surprising. Kansas City's had quite a few Gold Cup games in the past. Not this time around. St. Louis is coming to sneak in. Soldier Field comes in. I find this interesting, Heath, because I think that we're seeing a couple of markets here that didn't get World Cup bids or didn't get World Cup host city ones. Not that Soldier Field said they didn't want in, which I bet you they're kicking themselves for. But now they seem to be getting a little bit of the scraps here, the sloppy seconds for this Gold Cup venue. We have a couple stadiums in Houston. We got AT&T Stadium in Dallas. Cincinnati's getting a game. We have Fort Lauderdale, so Inter Miami Stadium getting a game. Charlotte FC getting a game. And Red Bull Arena getting a game. So kind of a mix of different sizes of stadiums, which I like too. You know, BMO Field in Toronto.
I mean, look, we know that the big draw in the Gold Cup is the Mexico national team, right? So when you think about their group stages, I could see them Soldier Field, no problem. They'll rock that house at least for a good amount of if they get a game there. Glendale, obviously, AT&T Stadium, obviously, Allegiant, obviously. Gold Cup final being at SoFi, obviously, and then I think the U.S. would do well in Levi's like it did during the Copa America Centenario. But like generally, those big stadiums, I would presume, are reserved are going to be most well used by the Mexico national team and what they draw. Otherwise, I like this. I like City Park Stadium in St. Louis. That's amazing. I want to see TQL in Cincinnati. Like these are atmospheres that are unbelievable for national team games that aren't going to be your biggest games and huge draws. Like that type of, I hated playing in quarter full stadiums with the national team because you went to a stadium that sort of was too big a capacity for the matchup. I didn't hate it, but it just, you want to feel that energy.
Sure. Well, our friend and former teammate of the U.S. men's national team, Hercules Gomez, said that or called out CONCACAF recently for hosting so many tournaments in the U.S. And I think he knows why it happens. There's just more money to be made. But I do think that there's an argument to be had about what if in the group stages of the Gold Cup, you give Jamaica a home game. It's not that far, right? You're only asking potentially somebody else to fly down to Jamaica. And there's already enough travel that's probably going to happen in this Gold Cup anyway, even from one side of the country to the other in the U.S. or giving Mexico a game at Azteca, or maybe one of their smaller venues. It doesn't have to be Azteca. I do think that there's something to be said there. I think it would be cool for Haiti to get a home game, or
I think it'd be amazing.
There's a lot of Haitians in the U.S. I know there's a lot of Jamaicans in the U.S. and it's cool to see your team where you're currently living, but I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a way that could maybe build out the federations of those countries so they continue to benefit from this as well.
Well, CONCACAF's goal is to develop 41 nations, right? So why would you give it to Haiti and not?
I'm not saying the whole tournament. I'm just saying one game.
You know?
Yeah,
but you go through a number of like Nations League home games. You get all these things, and very rarely are they well attended, right? Actually, that's a horrible blanket statement. That's not true at all. There's 41 nations. Each nation's going to be different. But like when your ability to drive revenue and bring in sponsors that are going to drive the ability to then have trickle down money into these developing nations and create programming specific to those countries, I do think you need to go where the biggest pool of money is. When I think about it on that sense, now I can't tell you whether or not the transparency of where a dollar goes when it gets earned and what nations it goes to, but in theory, they're the governing body for all 41 nations, right? Mm-hmm. And you're trying to earn as much money within your pool to be able to trickle that down and create programs. In my conversations with them, they care about, you obviously have to satisfy the bigger nations because that's where you can drive a lot of your revenue, but that revenue isn't just going into their pockets. That's meant to create programming and create more grassroots capabilities and possibilities and accessibility across the 41 nations. And so I do think having games in those places would be amazing, but in the same way that if you played a big game in the U.S., Mexico plays all their matches in the U.S., right? Because there's an ability to a financial benefit for them doing that.
Maximize the dollar that they're going to earn.
But CONCACAF as a governing body has a responsibility to make as much money as possible that can give money to nations to develop and create programs within those nations. Now, maybe that is better if you bring awareness and you bring the games and you bring all these things, but they do get Nations League, they do get qualifying, they do get a number of these things.
Sure.
And there is probably some systemic issues that keep going to the bigger countries that aren't allowing those other ones to develop, that are forcing them to stay generations behind over generation, which I agree with. And there's probably some deeper, darker things tied to that. But generally speaking, I would go after the bigger pool of money and trickle that down into these nations. But it would be great for those countries to all have a game too.
Yeah, I was speaking more romantically, and you're speaking more pragmatically, and that's where we're having. We're not on the same page there. All right, speaking of CONCACAF, let's get into the CONCACAF Champions League because the Final Four is almost set. Violette beat Lyon on Tuesday, but it wasn't enough because Lyon won the first leg 5-0, so Lyon moves on. And LAFC beat Vancouver 3-0. They went on aggregate 6-0 over the two legs. That was on Tuesday as well. So they booked their ticket to the semi. Philly, behind 2 goals from Julian Carranza, they end up coming back and getting a 2-2 result to get past Atlas. So they're into the semifinal.
What a ball from Jack McGlynn.
Unbelievable ball.
Yeah.
Philly, like when Philly's playing at their best and they're like super confident, they are a lot of fun to watch, which is more
often
often
done that a lot this year.
Not this year, but like over the last couple of years, it's been, they really are exciting.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
So you got LAFC versus Philly in one semifinal, which feels, I wish they were playing in the final, but here we are. So we got that. This is a rematch of the MLS Cup final from last year. One of the most epic, if not the most epic MLS Cup final of all time. Me and Heath and Charlie were all there in person. I think for the first time since we had started the show in Soccer We Trust. So that was very exciting. We got to witness some history together. Now they're going to play against each other over 2 legs in the semifinals. Maybe I like it better because it's over 2 legs. You get a little bit more, strategy and tactics in there, but that should be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. And Tigres plays Motagua tonight. They're up 1-0 and they're playing at home. So I like Tigres to go through and take on their Liga MX counterpart Lyon in the other semifinal. But it's lining up to be a fantastic CONCACAF Champions League. I just wanted to throw that out there. Now, Heath, before we let the good people go, and we again appreciate everybody's support, got some big matchups to watch this particular weekend and Monday, because Leeds takes on Liverpool on Monday. They need all the points that they can get. It's at Ellen Road. It's at home. It'll be interesting to see how they perform in that. Liverpool, you never know which version you're going to get of them this particular season. We have Chelsea taking on Brighton. Chelsea fresh off of losing to Real Madrid in Madrid 2-0 midweek. Christian Pulisic. I think why not? Just roll him out, man. Let this guy play a little bit. We'll see what ends up happening there. Let him start, I guess, is where I want to go. But we got El Tráfico in MLS, which I think is an exciting game. The first one got canceled at the beginning of the year due to inclement weather. What are you looking forward to? Any of these games stand out for you? Obviously, there's other players we got going. Obviously, we know the list around the world, but those are the three that I thought kind of jumped out at me.
I'm looking through the list now of just what might be big games. Valencia, Sevilla.
Well, that's a huge one. Yeah, Sevilla takes on Man United today, so we'll see if that impacts them at all. But having a midweek game when Valencia doesn't is interesting. I guess I'm kind of just trying to decide how many goals I think Dennis Bouanga is going to score against the LA Galaxy, because that dude is red hot. Remember when Sebastian Giovinco came into TFC and just lit up the league? I was like, this is the best tiny little guy I've ever seen in my entire life. And I think Bouanga's in that same type of form. Like, it doesn't matter where he's shooting from. It's hitting the back of the net. It doesn't matter the kind of runs he's making. The ball's going to find him. I mean, obviously he's doing incredible work to get himself in great spots, but he's just so relaxed and confident that I don't even like Chicho Arango. Who's that dude? Like, who? Not even missing Chicho Arango at all.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a little bit of you put somebody in maybe their best spot and they start to perform. And I think Jordan Morris would be another person at Seattle to look into. There is another game too. There's Nashville versus Cincinnati this week. And both of those teams have 5 clean sheets out of their first 7 games, which they're close to setting the record. There's only, I think, one other team that's had 6 clean sheets in their first 8 games in MLS history. And one of them might do it this week. Or they might both do it. Who knows if they have a 0-0 draw, but that's really an exciting game for me for a lot of different reasons. So I'm looking forward to that one. The Galaxy haven't won, man. The Galaxy haven't won. They're a train wreck.
Yeah. That one's, not having Chicharito has been a big loss for them, just because he's just got that knack for goal that when things aren't going good, he can just put you into games. He can score goals. He can light up that energy that you need. The other one is Genk Anderlecht. Mark McKenzie, Genk was like 10 points plus clear.
Dude, they were
all
so
season
clear
long,
at the top.
and now they're 2 points clear. And it's going to come down to the wire. And obviously they have a playoff system and all that sort of stuff that goes into, that goes on beyond that. But just they've lost a lot of the cushion. When you come in with a point gap when you go into those playoffs, and that has decreased big time. And so, I would love to see him get a championship there. We've had Americans do that before, from Oguchi Onyewu to Sasha Kljestan to not sure who else has won championships. Matt Miazga, I think he didn't they win on or maybe they drew? No, can't remember if Matt Miazga won, but I knew that he took away points on the final day of the season that made it so Genk couldn't win a couple seasons back, Mark's first season there. So would love to see another American player win a trophy, but it's tight from here on out.
Yeah, it's going to be really tight, squeaky bum time. And sometimes when you have that big of a lead, you relax in a way that you shouldn't. You lose a little bit of that sharpness. I think that's a natural collective human condition, or even individual condition that happens. I'm kind of curious about Groningen as well in the Dutch league with Ricardo Pepi.
They're dead, dude.
They've got 6 games to go, and they're 8 points out of relegation. Like, they're in the relegation zone.
Out of relegation playoff, right?
Well, no, that would be 7 points from relegation playoff, but 8 behind. Yeah, I mean, it's right there, 7 or 8 points. Yeah. But they've lost their last 5 straight. They're playing the 10th best team of Volvic this weekend.
I just hope that Ricardo Pepi does not have like a shirt underneath when he scores a goal that just says like "alone is hard," or like, does anybody want to help?
I'm never going back to Augsburg.
Yeah. Can anybody hear me?
That'd be absolutely hilarious. Obviously, we're on a Gio Reyna watch. We'll see if he gets to play any meaningful minutes. I mean, interesting times for a lot of our American players.
Exactly.
Across the board. All right, let's do a little story time before we let everybody go, because there's some big news happening between some players at Bayern Munich as Sadio Mane apparently punched Leroy Sané in the face. Apparently, Leroy Sané talked to Sadio Mane in a way that he didn't like, and that carried over off the field and into the locker room after the game. Now, City won 3-0, so I can understand why there was a lot of Bayern frustration. Sadio Mane and Leroy Sané have both apologized to the team, and Sadio has now been suspended from the team until further notice from new coach Thomas Tuchel. I wanted to know, Heath, if you've ever been in a situation where you had teammates in a fist fight of that nature, and what happened and why and all that good stuff. You have anything? You have anything juicy?
No, I don't really remember any fist fights breaking out. I mean, trying to think through it, but I don't remember.
There had to be some emotional outbursts.
Yeah, you had almost every day guys are in each other's faces like they're gonna fight, but no one ever fought. You know,
Yeah,
like it was always broken up and whatever, and it's always like the hold me back type of thing.
Like
but
when
I don't
you're
remember
walking towards somebody who will hold you back, so you don't have to act like you can still act tough.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hold me back.
Hold me back, dude. Hold me back.
Don't-
Get after this guy.
You better be happy they're holding me back. But no, I don't remember. Do you have any that of like pure like breakout and like straight up violence?
There was a time where Mauricio Wright, who used to play for the Costa Rican national team, played in a couple World Cups for them. He was my teammate in San Jose. And I remember him getting emotional one time. He didn't train the hardest. I love the guy, but he didn't train very hard. And when somebody that was training hard kind of challenged him, he didn't take to that too well. And I don't remember if he ever connected on a swing, but I remember that, maybe and it wasn't necessarily a fist, maybe it was an elbow, but there was some extra juice on some either our tackle. He wasn't afraid to fly in on 2-foot tackles too. I don't know why he jumps to mind, but I remember Mauricio Wright being a player that in training, sometimes you'd want a little bit more. The coaches would get on him. He's like, dude, I'm just ready when the game comes. And I'm sure you've been around guys like that too, that don't have any time for training, but in the games, they are another level. And I feel like Mauricio Wright fell into that category for me. Super talented, he was a defender that basically to dribble out of the back and could create. He could probably play holding midfield.
Those guys drove me. I mean, when Jesus Ferreira's dad, David Ferreira, we were 10 points in, 10 games into the season, and him and I were almost at blows every single day because he was lazy, man, lazy. And then all of a sudden we came together as a team, and it was kind of all basically saying, we don't trust what this coach is doing, but let's come together to fight together. And then all of a sudden he overnight became the best player in the league, won league MVP that year. And I was like, dude, you know what? You walk all you want in training. You walk all you want in games. You do whatever you want. We got you. We will cover it. But there was like that mutual no, you deliver, no problem. You don't deliver. We can't have you walking around in 5v5 because I got to track 2 men in a small sided game. Like, you better light it up. And then he was like lights out. But we were almost like every day in each other's faces, like arguing, like ready. It was coming, but somehow it didn't, and it came together, and we crushed it.
Yeah, I remember having something similar with Preki when we were in Kansas City. He was league MVP my first year there, and we played a 3-5-2 to accommodate him. So, and at first it used to piss me off. Like, why do I have to carry water for this guy? Why am I doing the extra work for this guy? But then I realized, why the hell do I want Preki, who's so incredibly gifted, wasting any energy defending? Like, I want him to get on the ball and have as much energy as possible to absolutely suffocate that other team and crush them, stomp on their throats, And so once I started to kind of change my perspective about what it means to have that type of player that has this world-class ability, and my role within the team, which was not that guy. I was the hardworking, hard on his sleeve guy that could just put guys in good spots to make plays. Then it started all fall in place. So not only did Preki, I felt like we had to meet him halfway, and it sounded like that's what happened with David Ferreira as well.
What I will tell you before you close out the show is that I think I've said it a number of times on the shows of Pablo Mastroeni's example of like, Pablo, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're the best player in training, and Saturday you jump on my back, is what Preki had said to him in his Preki accent, which is every day you do the business, you do the hard work, you're the guy, but on Saturday, I carry you.
I love that.
It's so good.
It's so good, and it's spot on. And I had played with Preki enough years to know that voice very clearly in my head. All right, everybody, we're going to end story time. We're going to end the show right here. So on behalf of producer Des, producer Alex, Charlie, Chuck Wagon Davies, Hollywood Heath Pearce, I'm Jimmy Cream Cheese, Trash Can Conrad, also known as Jim, saying thank you for listening and watching Doing Soccer We Trust. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games. and we will see you on the other side on Monday. See you then. Later.